Welcome back. One of the biggest poll promise of the Modi government when it came to power back in 2014 was the promise for jobs. A decade later, has the government made any progress on the promise? Here's what the data says. Now, according to the National Sample Survey, the unemployment rate decreased to 6.8% during 2023 from 8.2% a year ago in urban areas. Now, this development suggests that there is a potential turnaround in the job market amid prevailing economic issues such as global inflation and slower demand. Data released by the Centre for Monitoring Indian Economy also supports the claim of more jobs. Data shows that the country's unemployment, or rather employment rate, increased to 36.9% in March of 2023 from 36.6% in December of 2022, while the number of unemployed people dropped by almost 2 million. While at 36.9%, employment rate is not very pleasant, it's getting better. The trend is also supported by data released from the periodic labour force survey. Yet, we hear of layoffs each day, from tech to IT sector to startups. Layoffs and the absence of enough jobs is a part of our everyday conversation and everyday narrative. Will Budget 2024 upon us and the elections around the corner turn around jobs market, and what should the government do to drive jobs for India? Let's talk about that. Joining us is Mohandas, Chairman, Aarin Capital. Also with us is Prabir, distinguished HR strategist, founder and CEO of Prabir People Advisory. Before I come to you, Prabir, let me quickly get in Mr. Pai into this conversation. Mr. Pai, thank you very much for taking time out. I want to first begin by asking you, it's an election year and the budget is also around the corner. As we kickstart our budget expectations and the coverage of what industries, people, common man is expecting, what are your big expectations as far as job creations is concerned?
The budget has to make sure that we are producing jobs in the 300 poorest districts of India. They must pick up the 300 poorest districts out of 750 and give a scheme to say anybody hiring anybody in this district and having a PF and a ESI number if required and paying a contribution will be given 2,000 rupees a month for every new job for 24 months. And they must aim to create 2 crore new jobs in this 300 poorest district over the next maybe 5 years. And that will transform the poorest district like nothing else, because jobs will be created, demand will be created. And there's good infrastructure and all this. It may cost maybe 4,000 crores a year, 50,000 crore, which is peanuts. Because the union budget is about, 50 lakh crores next year. Paying about, 48 for, 50,000 crores for that is peanuts. And that will send a strong message. The second thing is we must ease the tax rates for those people who get new jobs, in the urban areas and other areas. I would say the tax slab have to be reconfigured to say 0 to 5 lakhs, no tax, 5 to 10, 10%, 15 to 5 to 10, 10%, 10 to 15, 20%, above 15, 30%, with 12% surcharge above 15 lakhs a year. And remove most of the incentives or tax breaks, including housing, except for 80D for insurance and possibly 80G for philanthropy. Apart from that, everything should be removed. This will help young people joining the workforce. They'll have more cash, and senior citizens who are retired, who get pension and savings, interest, they don't have to invest in anything to get a tax break because they pay tax all their lives. And the third thing we must do is, in urban areas, we must make sure that the official minimum wages for many things like nursing, like hospitality and others are raised, because they're not been raised for many years. As a rule, in all the tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities, they must be raised so that people get a little bit of more money. I think these 3 things are required to improve job creation and send a message that job creation is the foremost priority of the budget.
All right, so put more money in people's hand, perhaps also give them some sort of tax break by the way of restructuring of tax slab, and that will ensure more employment. Prabir, would you agree with that? Given how the job markets have performed in the past couple of years, and particularly if you look at data seem to suggest that the employment rate is in fact on a high, especially when it comes to urban employment. Rural employment is also not looking very bad at the moment. But if I were to ask you to break that data down and perhaps for the benefit of our viewers, tell us how the informal sector is looking at the moment? Because that is where we don't have much clarity. Is there enough jobs? Is there enough job creation when it comes to informal sector?
So great. So first, very clearly, I tend to agree with Mohan completely. At the end of the day, unless you incentivize and consciously incentivize, spaces which are possibly more job accretive, you're not going to be solving the problem of unemployment. But I'm very happy you raised the question about the informal sector, because, one of the things when we talk about IT sector, and you and I have talked a lot about that, these appear more jazzy. But at the end of the day, let us be honest, there is a lot of employment which is not in sectors that you and I typically talk about. Agriculture, for example, still is the largest employer in some form or the other. 148 million is the number of people who it engages in employment. Or the non-BFSI is 140 million. Real estate construction, a lot of it is in a way disguised employment. Is at 71 million. Even formal manufacturing is only 36 million people. So the point is that at the end of the day, a lot of our unemployment issues is also to do with aspiration and ability mismatch. And while the government has been talking about, and in fair measure, I think there has been a lot of effort in the last 5 years on skill development, I think a bigger strategic issue is about, trying to rethink the proliferation of so-called higher education universities and start looking at formal vocational skills. I'm a very strong believer, unless you shift your mindset to vocational education. Incidentally, the national education policy has talked about it, right? But has it actually taken off, both by government, industry, and by society? I don't know. So at the end of the day, this so-called unorganized sector also needs to scale up in terms of skills. Mohan talked about some sectors, and I tend to agree. For example, the shift from unorganized to even a formal organization is an opportunity. And look at ways in which you can build a new India, by backing on this. So, example, geriatric care support, or what we otherwise called household support, with more and more double income couples happening. It's a huge opportunity, but it's not given an organized space. Trucking, huge opportunity, but where are truck drivers?
Right. Absolutely.
So
fair enough. Fair enough. Absolutely. It appears right now that the current workforce is not able to match up to the skills that the companies who are hoping to recruit them need on ground. And what can the budget do about it? Let's get Mr. Mohandas Pai back into this conversation. Mr. Pai, you are an educationist yourself, sir, and one of the problems that the education system have at the moment is that it does not skill you for a job. It imparts education, as Prabir pointed out, it imparts you with an education, but perhaps doesn't skill you, or doesn't give you the requisite skills that you need to be a part of that skilled workforce. Would you agree with that?
See, what the government is doing, setting up skill development corporation, then they'll go to a trainer, pay them money, they'll get training in beauty, they'll get training in some silly program which are no use. What they should do is to have a large apprenticeship program. Tell industry to partner with them for apprentice and say, if you pay 12,000-15,000 rupees to an apprentice, we'll give you 50%. And give it through a bank like SBI, not through the government. Because if you go to a government program, they don't pay you money. They harass you. Then many of them will ask for a bribe. That's the reality of life. So appoint a payment banker like in SBI and say that if you have a person who is, let us say, hired on apprentice, and he's got a salary account and he gets money, immediately on getting that money, they will credit that kind of money to the company account or something like that, which can be tracked. So you need actual skill on the job. And that job can only be done to an apprenticeship program, not having training done by some third party. Many of them may be bogus in some parts of the country. Many of them may be no use. Okay. And the government is spending a whole lot of money, apprentices. Look, Shweta, I'm a chartered accountant. Okay. When I have to pass my exam, I had to do 3-year apprenticeship. I picked up so much of work. We became experts because we are exposed to work. That's the kind of apprenticeship required, not training in some theory somewhere in a remote area, etc. So we need the program, and easily I think 15-20 lakh people can be trained. It can be in healthcare, it can be in hotels, it can be hospitality, it can be in electronic assembly, it can be in many other countries
Right.
of choice. Register them as partners and then have a program where just on minimum verification, you pay the company for paying that money or reimburse 50%.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, Prabir, I think that begs the next question to all those people who are currently sitting and watching us on this show. I think they would want to know if they are to skill themselves, if there is a need for more skilled workforce in the market, what skills should they look at acquiring? Would it be skills in manufacturing? Would it be skills in tech? What sort of skills that they should be acquiring now to become employable?
So there are two ways of looking at it, Shweta. And, as a person who works a lot in the areas of careers, I don't think, careers should be only what the world or the market says. It's very important to anticipate the need for newer skills in whichever industry, and also look at your own strengths, your own areas of interest and passion. Both have to combine. Otherwise, it is not sustainable. So, for me, and, to the point that Mohan mentioned, that's exactly what I said. You have to vocationalize. You have to have an apprenticeship program. In my own experience, when I was a CHRO of Dr. Reddy's, and I also saw it in my stint in Tata Motors, these are companies which ran very, very successful apprenticeship programs. Many of them became excellent entrepreneurs. Many of them became leaders in industry. The mindset actually has to shift from fishing to farming. And, unfortunately, we will have our expectations of the government, but I also have our expectations from corporates. And let me be honest, it's not that we have done our job as right as we should. So we find it easier to go and poach some skilled, resource or in the area that we want. So what new skills will depend really on the emergent areas. I believe healthcare is an area of great focus for the nation. I think it will generate huge opportunities and skills across the entire value chain. Just as an example, textiles, huge opportunity.
So Prabir, I think since we are discussing budget, I think the question that I think government needs to answer, perhaps people are asking at this point, is that what can the government really do to turn around that job market and to ensure that people get those crucial skills that you're mentioning?
So nothing will happen tomorrow morning because this budget will be a vote on account. So don't expect anything dramatic. At least I don't expect anything dramatic beyond some political signals. But whenever the formal full-time budget will be presented after the elections and taking a 5-year perspective, I think a lot of the sentiment which both Mohan and I are saying in terms of actual job creation must get signaled by due support. For example, you want every town, every district to be a hub for certain export of a product or service. How does it actually move from intent to actual support? How do you incentivize people to invest? How do you incentivize people to therefore start building quality skills, right? So directionally, the government is saying the right things. I, at least for one, don't disagree. But, the action on the ground must be supported, at least in the budgetary announcements of support, of incentives, in a manner which encourages people to start looking at these areas. Everyone today, it's I'll just take half a minute, having worked as a bureaucrat myself. Imagine in India, the obsession with, graduation. To become a civil servant, you need to be a graduate. To become a peon, you need to be a graduate. I mean, it's hilarious. And the entire society is obsessed with just getting into a higher education bracket. So government should disincentivize just blind proliferation of money by private or public sector into higher education and actually support greater skill building, conscious skill building. Let people have an option of choosing where they want to go. It can't be the government's choice to decide who will do what, but give them that opportunity. And encourage more entrepreneurs to create more jobs. So that's how the market will.
Encourage more entrepreneurs to create more jobs, and the government perhaps incentivize people to upskill themselves by the way of either discouraging traditional education or implementing the new education policy that people will be able to avail to skill themselves for the job market out there. Both Prabir Jha as well as Mohandas Pai talking about a need to put money where the mouth is, and that is in skilling people. Prabir, Mohandas, thank you very much, sirs, for joining us and for speaking to News9 Live.